Hi, Alexander Khubeev. It's
Hi.
very nice to have you in my blog, and
Thank you.
maybe you can, in some words, in some few words, just a little bit, make some small introduction.
Yes, sure. I'm composer Alexander Khubeev from Russia. I was born in Perm in Urals, and now I live in Moscow for about 15 years. Um, uh, I compose different kinds of music, acoustical, with electronics, with video, with lights sometimes. But also I create different educational projects and teach. So I'm a creator of composition course music.org, and I'm an artistic director of International Young Composers Academy in Tchaikovsky City in Russia. And since this year, I also teach in Moscow Tchaikovsky Conservatory.
Thank you very much. You have very broad experience, right? And you are one of the greatest young generation composers from Russia, at least from what I saw. And
Maybe, I don't know.
I have one question, right? What is a good musical composition for you?
Well, for me, the good musical composition is something which brings elements I've never seen or I have never heard. This is what I appreciate the most. I think even if the piece is well done, but there is nothing new for me and nothing to think about after to reflect, then maybe it's not such a good composition, at least for me.
And maybe you can name some last piece which has these qualities of which you have heard.
Um, well, there are a lot of pieces like that. Um, well, just recent concerts. There was a festival, Moscow Forum in Russia, and there were pieces by Matya Shvetel. I don't. It's called Nocturne for several performance in lamps, and or pieces by Alexander Schubert, which were also performed in this concert. Um, yeah, there are a lot of pieces like that. I can continue endlessly.
Or a piece which has some kind of, it's a surprise element for you, right? Or surprise novatoric element for you.
Yes, well, they definitely all these pieces I call like they can have have this kind of elements, but also recently I heard the piece of I don't remember the name, I don't remember the last name, Mark Hall. I think he's a German composer, and he used the microphones, the system which very fast turns on and off microphones, and it was a vocal piece, something like traditional vocal texture, probably even from pre-baroque music.
Mhm.
But then he used this microphone as amplification. He turned it on and off so fast through the max patch, I guess. Then it created another layer above this traditional music, which created a sort of a new transcription, a new way to make a transcription of classical music, and that sounded fantastically for me.
Good.
So yeah, this one maybe which impressed me recently the most.
And just maybe just thinking about you, right? Uh, about yourself. What is like musical idea or some signature which you usually or more frequently came back and or use in your works?
Well, probably there are several ones. At first, I need to say that I kind of can divide my creation on two parts. When I work completely with some acoustic material and without any sort of electronics. And another one is when I work with some electronics with programmed light or with some videos or with instrumental theater. And these are kind of two different fields of interest of mine. And I'm always interested in both cases to work on some material, some acoustic material, which is very limited in a way. So I like to find some special techniques of playing on the instruments, or maybe on some objects, or maybe even create my own instruments constructed, and then to work with this limited material to find what are the possibilities of these elements, which are new, at least for me, maybe not for everyone. So this is maybe the most characteristic one. And then I try to find the way to build the piece, to build the dramaturgy on this very limited material. So it's a very interesting challenge for me always to do a big thing out of very small things.
Yes. Can you give some examples of your?
Yes, sure. For instance, one of the pieces which kind of connects both parts of my interests is a piece called Ghost of Dystopia. And there I used a performer, a conductor, who is connected to 16 different plastic boxes which move on glass surfaces. And this is sonically a very limited material because you can't play a scale with it. You don't have many options of different kinds of sound. Even though the material is unstable and these boxes usually produce multiphonics, and quite often it's different, it still was a very challenging task for me to build a form out of that and to connect this constructed instrument, which is connected to performer, to connect all this thing with the music ensemble. And then I also used these plastic boxes for percussionists, for other performers to move it on a glass surface or to play with the bow. Also, I prepared strings with pieces of styrofoam to create a sort of similar sound with, and because styrofoam also works as sort of acoustic filter, not electronic one, but acoustic, which adds more high frequencies, which is also close to the sound of these boxes. So all the things are, they sound quite special, I think, but also it's quite limited. And then the piece is around 11 or 12 minutes. So yeah, it was, so I think it's a good example of what I start from and what I try to build out of that.
Got it. But it somehow, at least from my side, what I see is that you are using a lot of interesting, let's say, self-created instruments, right? Or sound, or something that produce sounds, right? Let's say analogous sensors or what you mentioned like previous. Is this very like common for you that you build something on your own?
Yeah, it's common, but at the same time, I think that probably I have just 3 or maybe 4 pieces where I constructed the instrument exactly. But generally, I try to make it relatively simple to be able for performers to reproduce it at any other place. Yes. So yeah, for instance, I have the piece for solo performer with the instruments, which consists of 4 steel wires and 4 plastic bottles, which are connected with the body of performer. So it seems quite easy to reproduce if you have the desire. And generally, I think I'm interested to use relatively simple objects or to use objects combining with instruments. Yeah, I think it's generally I'm more interested even if I use object to connect it with the instruments to have a new vision of working with traditional instruments actually. So yeah, exactly what happens also in the Ghost of Dystopia. I mean, I create instrument, but also all other instruments are traditional ones.
Yes, got it. And I have seen some pieces where you use a video, right, as well.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself as a multimedia composer or not?
Partly. As I said, I'm also interested in completely acoustic music, and I think even though multimedia that takes a bigger role in contemporary music, I think that still acoustic music will exist and will develop as well. So yeah, I'm interested in multimedia as well, but I don't work only with multimedia, and I think I will never do. But well, let's see.
And maybe you can a little bit tell about how you created magic, right? What's the process of composing for you? What stages you go through? And
I start from improvising on the instruments quite often. I think generally I have two ways to start working on the piece. The first one is when I improvise on the instruments, use some objects and find some sounds, sonorities, so maybe playing techniques which I like and would like to build a piece on. And the second thing is when I have some non-musical idea, and then I start to think how I can reflect these ideas in music, and how should I use instruments or objects or maybe electronics working with this non-musical idea.
Can you give some example and just for some piece and just go through each stage?
Yeah. Well, for instance, the piece which is based completely on acoustical, on just on the sound at first, on my experience of improvising, is probably the piece called Sounds of the Dark Time. Yes. A relatively old piece, but I found some playing technique, sort of bow pizzicato, when you put the bow on the strings and sort of have a pressure, but don't move the bow, but just make one by one sort of pizzicato with the bow, and that was the starting point. And then I started to build the piece mostly out of this material, and then this granulated material, it went through other instruments. It went to piano at some point, to woodwinds. It's a piece for 8 instruments, and yeah, so there I started from the sound, from the playing technique, and it was the impulse for the whole piece. In some pieces, actually, I combine both. So I have non-musical idea and I find some playing techniques, and then it's combined in the very beginning. It was like that with Ghost of Dystopia also, actually, because I found this. I decided to make the construction of this instrument with plastic boxes, but at the same time, I realized that it really looks like sort of a spider or master of puppets. And the concert I was proposed to compose this piece for had a topic, utopia and revolution, something like that, I think. And then I thought that this really looks like some very dystopian thing. So someone who is in control of a lot of things, and it's very visual, it's well presented for the audience. And then I started to think about the relationship between the performer and ensemble. And the performer is in a place of conductor, so actually it becomes a metaphor of leader and society. Then it's also connected with the idea of dystopia. So it was at a very starting point, and then I decided that I will build the dramaturgy of the piece on different kinds of relationship between the leader and society. And all the textures and music material will work on this idea, and also gestures which are written in a score for the performer. They are also connected with this idea of different kinds of relationship between a leader and society. So yeah, here I have both ideas coming at the same time, but also sometimes I have non-musical idea which goes first, and then I start to work on musical material. For instance, it was like that in one of the recent pieces of mine, Don't Leave the Room, on text by Joseph Brodsky, where I had actually a lot of non-musical ideas, I would say social ideas, which were the most important thing at first, and I started to think about the structure, making a basement on these ideas, and then I also started to think about music material. So there, the visual part and the visual representation of these ideas and generally social ideas were more important at first.
Got it. And now I will ask you a question from Simon Steen Andersen. What do you as a composer fears the most?
Fear. Well, I fear to be disappointed in music. I mean, I have the desire to compose, and I'm enjoying the process. Well, not all parts of the process, some of them I don't like, but generally I like to compose and I like music. But at the same time, I saw composers who, as I think, kind of disappointed in music and are not so interested anymore. So I think that's what I fear the most.
Yes, and the next question is from Francois Charan. I don't know how. I think you are too young, right? But it's a question which he asked everybody: is why do you still compose?
Well, it's it's connected with my previous answer. Actually, I enjoy it, and I'm not disappointed yet, and hopefully will never be. And I'm glad that I have some ideas appearing in my head and which don't let me to be calm and make me working on the music and composing and hopefully moving to some new territories, at least for me, for myself.
And looking back, right? Looking at 10 years back, right? You look on yourself and how you compose and what you've written 10 years back and now. What are the biggest changes, right?
I think then I completely avoided to think about all the details of performance, let's say, about how it looks like, about the whole process of perception for the listener.
Yes.
I think now and generally during this last 10 years, I started to think more about what kind of light I need to use, or if should I use something else, not only acoustic elements. I started to think about gestural part of performance, and I started to think a lot about the visual perception, and then I started also to work with video, with lights, or with performers more. Yeah, I think that's the biggest change. And also I started to work more with electronics. I think that I added several more layers to my work, and added some new tools.
Yes, and maybe you can say, okay, looking back, what was the triggers? Why you start adding this visual element, right? What happened, and how you learned that it's important, or what was trigger event?
Well, I think that I started to think more about people on the other side, about listeners who perceive the music, and I started to think more about which elements which we have on stage can work on my piece, and they currently don't work at all.
Yes.
Like I think that it's generally very characteristical to the history of music that during the centuries, composers started to work more and more on details of everything what happens on stage. If we would look at scores of Bach, for instance, there are so many details missed, which actually are interpreted by performers. And then if we look more and more, then in 20th century, composers started to add so many details about timbre, about, I don't know, different playing techniques, about how to enter the stage and all these things. So I just think that composers more and more start to think about all these details. It's just a very general thing, and probably it will develop even more, that composers start to sort of think that they are directors of the whole performance, not only composers. And it's not like I do it in every piece. Sometimes I feel that it's not really necessary, but in certain pieces, all these things suddenly become very important. And it didn't happen at one moment like that, of course. So it just came from my experience generally, gradually.
Yes, and the second, because you said that you added two layers, right? One is visuality, and second is electronics.
Yes, that just, I guess, comes more from learning about new technologies we have. Because, well, we always learn, and I also hope to develop in this way to know more about different kind of microphones, devices, or how it works with acoustic instruments or objects, and how I can combine electronics with different other media, how I can synchronize and make it dependent on each other with live video or with live light control. So it's very connected actually with visual things. So when I use electronics recently, I also quite often think about how I can combine with other media.
Got it. And what are the most, let's say, right? You mentioned technology. What is like the most frequent or most significant, right? You can answer both ways. Technological artifacts which you use. I don't know, softwares, hardware. What is?
Well, one of the recent is it's relatively simple, but I used in one of my pieces the lights, lamps, yes, which are connected to the same computer as electronics, and I also used a max patch, which for which I made a light score of MIDI signal, which goes through the patch to this through the MX to these lamps. So it becomes audio-visual composition where light is as as important part of the composition as actually music.
Got it. And just seeing some of your works, right? So what I saw is that there are some that you are building something, but not always right digital, right?
Yeah.
So and then of course for me is the question, right? So just of course let's say comparing Schubert or Stefan Prince, right, which is like very like technologically right driven composers. How big plays in your like let's say in your composing or in your composer life plays these technologies, right? Is it something very important or it's still more let's say peripheral level or?
It's I would say relatively important. Because I think that different kind of technologies impact a lot also what I do in acoustical music. I mean, I like.
Sorry, I just was actually I was just asked for example.
Yeah. For example, so just it's important that my perception of acoustic music changes a lot. So I like to also compose acoustic music.
Yes.
Which sounds like electronics.
Yes.
So that's why I think that technologies, will not be as important that I will use it in every piece, because I'm still very interested in rethinking what the acoustic music is after all the electronic media which surround us.
Yes, but then right, if I correctly understand, right, that still, right, if you are not the most technological driven, right, a composer, still technology plays even in your life quite importantly, right? So it becomes like one of the fundament or one core things, right, for composer nowadays.
Yeah, I think so, probably. But I still like to spend my time with classical instruments, actually. I have almost all the usual orchestral instruments at my home, and when I compose a piece, I always try to play on these instruments to find something, and this actually inspires me a lot. So even if I'm interested in using technologies in a piece, I'm still very much getting inspiration from playing the instruments.
Okay, and what kind of software you use for, I don't know, for scribing these scores or?
For just Finale.
Okay.
Yeah, I also use. I use another program, another software as well. It's like Nuance PDF converter, where it's possible to draw in a PDF file. Yes. And yeah, it's also very good. Like it gives an opportunity to make parts easily, because you can copy what you draw above the PDF to parts. So well, I use several programs.
Can you code? Can you code some programs as well? Do you have some coder skills or programmer skills?
Not as much, actually. Yeah, I'm not sure I like live electronics as much. Well, I mean, at least to compose myself with live electronics. But I like more to collaborate with different artists with live videos, for instance, or with live lights. So regarding these coders technologies, I mostly collaborate with other people to do something.
But the question is, as I understand, right? You said that you are using your own built analogous instruments. Are you building on your own, or you are engineer, or you are for some help, or how it works?
Well, actually, I got some help, as the mother of my wife is engineer. So when I needed an advice regarding instruments, she always gave me some good tips regarding
You are
that.
doing your own, right? Or
No, so I mean, I built it myself, but then I just, if I had some doubts, I asked, you know, I want it to be stable. I want it to definitely work, and will it work like that? And then she said, well, maybe you can add this, and then it was really helpful actually. So the ideas, what to construct are mine, but also I built it myself, but I need this advice from her to to make it work better and more stable.
but in your case, right, as I understand, right, in your case, this engineering skills plays some importance, right? Because you are building, maybe not in all pieces, but you are building your own instruments, right? This is one part of your signature, right? So this is very important content for you, right?
Yes, I think so. I think I constructed instruments for 3 or 4 pieces, but yeah, I think it's generally important. And sometimes I use these instruments in other pieces later.
Yeah.
Yes, but also it becomes important because, for instance, in my string quartet, I used. I put all my all string instruments on tables, and they are all connected with tables. So you need to understand well how to make it fast, how to make these instruments fixed well, so to describe it all in a score. And this seems to be quite simple, but at the same time, some experience in this field really helps to work with such things. And yeah, and I continue to use different special objects, and well, yeah, it's part of my signature, I guess.
Got it. And you as a composer, right? What kind of the biggest changes you see in music landscape within this century, right? In last 20 years, how new music changed, right?
Yes, well, it's the thing is, it's also hard for me to disconnect it from my own development. I mean, 10 years ago, I didn't know a lot of names which already existed at that point, but I just didn't know it because, well, I would say I'm relatively young. So, and also generally in Russian education, we have some problems with possibility to get some scores of even 20th century, let alone 21st. So I guess just a lot of things I discovered. I discovered it quite much later than it actually appeared. But generally, as I said, I think that different kinds of technologies and a new approach to the whole music performance, to the whole process of performance, to the staging of performance is something which is important and probably will be even more important. I also feel like it's not also only connected with what composers do, but it's also connected with what ensembles want to do, which musicians want to do, because I think that they are interested more and more in making a project which is kind of staged and all the details are planned. And I think that's the new way to think about concerts. And I actually hope that ensembles will dive more and more into these details of performance, because all these things which surround the performance, they affect the perception, and it can be in a good way or in a bad way. And if it's planned, it's always much better.
Yes. So it's more, you see, one thing what I understand, right, is that you see is the same thing what you said about yourselves, that you are more, let's say, more adding this visual elements, more performative.
Performative, yeah.
So this is some kind of one big change what's happening in new music scene right now.
Yeah, I think so. But at the same time, I feel that when there is movement to one side, there is always movement to the opposite side, where like music, where there are no changes, I don't know, where changes are so subtle, like in Multimedia group music. So yeah, it's always coexisting. So. Yeah, I believe that what's important is not actually to work more with technologies or multimedia or whatever else, but just it's important to be a unique composer, because there are a lot of different ways to find new approaches to music and to work with something which is completely different. I don't think that there is like one simple, direct way to create something new. There are always a lot of ways, and I guess it's more important for composers just to be honest with themselves and to do what they are really interested. And
what do you feel, right? This new music scene, they're more encouraging this individuality, like authenticity, right? This multi-way approach, right? Is it this encouragement are more open than it was some 20 years ago?
Well, 20 years ago I was 14, and I didn't know. I didn't know who Ligeti Oxenakis was, so it's hard to reply like that, but I think that it's not something very, like syncretic, united when the scene of contemporary music, and I believe it's very different. We can talk about more or less Western Europe or Central Europe, but that's like one contemporary music scene. But also, if you would look closer, French new music scene is completely different from German one. And also Russian music scene is also completely different.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't really feel that.
And Middle East completely different.
Yeah, and American one is also very different. So you can't really, even though we have internet, the world becomes more globalized. At the same time, I don't believe we can talk about contemporary music scene as a whole, because it's very diverse, and there are a lot of different things. And I think this is actually very good, because even though people often ask the question about national element in the music, because it kind of disappears, but I believe it just changes. Of course, it gradually disappears because we don't use national melodies anymore, like in 19th century. But there are some mental things, or let's say this contemporary music scene, different contemporary music scenes, which have their some things which can unite everything. At the same time, even in Russia, contemporary music scene is very diverse, a lot of different personalities. I don't think that we can talk about something general here.
Yes, very interesting thing what you said. You said that one trend is this multimedia trend, right? But you said the second is that what you see is this tendency of sound only, incremental changes, right?
I think probably there are not two, much more, I guess. Like we can also talk about, I don't know, working about site-specific works, and about working with certain buildings and adjusting the pieces, which is also completely different. I mean, it creates much more connections with the theater. So yeah, but I think there are a lot of different things, and also completely acoustic music still exists. But also, even if we talk about multimedia, we can talk about works like lo-fi works. We can talk about analog works, working with I don't know, cassette recorders or something like that, which is also lo-fi, but different kind of. But we can find very different things even in this world of multimedia and electronics, and very different kinds of approaches. Or we can find composers who use electronics to create something and then make a transcription to a completely acoustic piece, which is also connected with electronics. But I saw such examples as well. So it's, yeah, I don't think that we can name one, 2, 3 trends. There are much more, and yeah, what is more important is just the speciality, the unique thing in approach of each composer.
Yes, and how audience change, right?
Sorry?
How new music audience change?
Audience. Well, I probably can talk only about Russia in this regard. I believe that there are more and more people here who are interested in contemporary art and contemporary music. And I think that the audience generally here is very young, which is not really happening in Europe, as I understand. And generally, what I see on the concerts is that the audience is relatively old, but here it's the other way around. I see a lot of young people in different venues, even in traditional ones like a conservatory, for instance, but also in theaters or museums of contemporary art, where contemporary music concert might happen. Audience is also quite young. So and also generally, I think that in Moscow there are so many events of contemporary music. Like even we had a festival in Moscow Conservatory, Moscow Forum, Festival of Contemporary Music. It was 5 days, and out of these 5 days, at 4 of these days, there were concerts of contemporary music in other places at the same time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in also in some big venues. So yeah, you cannot even, you need to choose which contemporary music concert you want to visit. So yeah, I believe that here at least I'm quite optimistic about the audience coming to contemporary music concerts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But looking forward, right? What kind of, I don't know, main future trends you see? What's going on in new music, or what shapes to your mind the future?
Well, it's I'm not sure I can predict the future. I think it's. I think I already answered actually that the music world becomes more and more diverse. Yes. Even contemporary music, even yes. Though we can even though we can talk about bubble a little bit, yeah, in a contemporary music world, which is relatively small. At the same time, I think that there are very diverse things happening, and I believe that it will happen even more. Because also some people, I don't know, they want to get back to I don't know, like I said, cassette recorders or lo-fi music of 90s, or I don't know, some other techniques of the past, and sort of transform it in a very own new way. But we also have new technologies developing, which allow us to do certain new things.
Yes.
So and we collect more and more of these opportunities to rethink the past, or to create something completely new, or to combine it. And I believe that it will make the scene even more diverse. And we will see more and more unique composers actually. So it's not really a trend in the music, but it's a trend in contemporary music world. I believe it will happen more and more.
Yes. And what is the role of new music in society now?
Well, I'm not sure it impacts the society a lot generally. As I said, we are in a sort of bubble. We are a bit like in a place of fundamental science, where people don't really know these names, but at some point these names become important. And I just think that it doesn't impact much now, probably. But yeah, I believe that some of the most special composers of our time and their music will impact the society in future more. As time goes by, it will gradually find its way in a repertoire of different musicians, and then it will impact the society more. I don't believe that new music impacted the society generally a lot at any point that much. I mean, did Tchaikovsky impact the society? Not a lot, because the majority of the people couldn't even visit the concerts. They lived in countryside. So I don't think that we really need to count on this. Yeah, it's probably their own music scene for this. I don't know. I'm a bit pessimistic about this, but I think that it's just it doesn't mean that it's not important. It's just how it generally works.
Yes, so thank you, Alexander, for this and for this interview.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sandris, and for everyone who joined us.